So this is Odyssey 6, sections 3 and 4. Recap, shall we say. Odysseus has been washed ashore on the coast of this island, and it's the land of the Phaeacians, and Odysseus's patron, the goddess Athene, is concerned for him. He's alone, he's naked, he's vulnerable, and she wants to make sure that he will be discovered by somebody who will look after him rather than somebody who might threaten him or even kill him. And therefore she has appeared in a dream to Nausicaa. Now Nausicaa is the daughter of the ruling family in the land of the Phaeacians. Her father is Alcinous, her mother is Arete, and Nausicaa Athene basically engineers a meeting between Nausicaa and Odysseus, which will be a bit of a shock for Nausicaa. Naked man meets young girl. It is going to be a shock for Nausicaa, but it's going to be a help for Odysseus, because being discovered by Nausicaa is mean that he will be welcomed and he'll be safe. How does Athene engineer this meeting? Well, she appears to Nausicaa in her dream, disguised as one of Nausicaa's best friends, and says, Nausicaa, you're of an age to be married now, you're going to be married very soon. One thing you will need will be clean clothes, and therefore you must take care of the laundry. You must go down to the river, clean the clothes, and that's where the meeting between Odysseus and Nausicaa will take place. So in the first two sections, Nausicaa has gone to her father, Alcinous, and said, Daddy dear, Papa Phila, can you give me a cart or a wagon to take the clothes down to the river? And here we have now, at the beginning of section 3, hos ephato. Thus she spoke. Now you get some sort of phrase in Homer after every piece of direct speech. Nausicaa has made her speech to her father, and it's a way of indicating to the listener that the speech has come to an end and that the narrative is resuming. Thus she spoke. Now the next verb, eidomai, is very important. It means I am ashamed, or probably better here, I'm embarrassed. Because the one thing that Nausicaa has not mentioned in the speech to her father is her real motivation, which is her prospective marriage. And she was embarrassed, well, for she was embarrassed. Here's the infinitive, ex onomeni, for she was embarrassed to name, to mention her marriage. Thaleron is an interesting adjective here. I think we're going to translate it as her possible marriage, her prospective marriage, for she was embarrassed to mention her prospective marriage. Gamos is, you might know the verb gameo, I marry. This is the noun gamos, marriage. She was embarrassed to mention explicitly her possible marriage, patri philoi, to her dear father. And this is quite interesting because this sort of embarrassment is, I suppose, typical of teenagers, and it's well observed by Homer. Also, you've got to remember that a girl of Nausicaa's status, princess of the ruling family, daughter of the king, in those days would expect her parents to have much more say in the choice of a husband than parents have now. And if she starts taking the initiative about her own marriage, then this could be construed as a challenge to her father's power. Her father would be expecting to arrange her marriage. He's not expecting Nausicaa to arrange it herself. And it's interesting, therefore, that these issues that arise here for Nausicaa are still issues, of course, that exist, especially in Muslim families today. She would also, of course, marriage has sexual connotations, and she would be reluctant to bring up such a subject with a man, even her father. So we can understand perfectly Nausicaa's shyness on this matter. It's also, in actual fact, quite calculating on her part. It's a little bit of a deception. She's thinking about her marriage, but she's not mentioning it. But this is so. There's a certain, Nausicaa is not stupid. There's a certain amount of calculation here, which again is very typical of teenagers in dealings with their parents. I don't need to tell you that. In the next sentence, then, we have ho de panta noe, and the hot there, hot makes it clear that the subject has changed. The subject is now masculine, and it must, of course, be Alcinous, Nausicaa's father. And we must translate the de here as but. But her father understood this verb, noeo, everything. Means to say that her father sees through Nausicaa's deception. He knows that she's thinking about her marriage. And he replied, mebomai is the verb, and he replied muthoi, with a speech of his own. And you can see the next three words are Alcinous's reply, and he replied with a speech. So it's interesting that her father is not deceived by Nausicaa's little deception, but he's not going to mention it. It's interesting, isn't it, that he knows that it's a sensitive issue, and he knows that his daughter is slightly embarrassed to speak about these things, and he doesn't want to add to her embarrassment. He's not going to mention it. Now, this is typical of a civilized family. This ruling family, the king and queen of the Phaeacians and their daughter Nausicaa and their sons, is portrayed as a very civilized, almost an ideal family, where other people's sensitivities are respected. So what does Alcinous say? This is the verb phthoneo, and it means to begrudge. And he says, I begrudge you, toi, I begrudge you neither mules nor anything else, tekos, my child. So the uta, the neither nor, the two negatives there, emphasise her father's generosity. You can have mules, you can have anything you want. It's an odd construction in that what you begrudge, it goes in the genitive case. Her mionon here is a genitive, and tu alu is a genitive. What you begrudge goes not in the accusative case, as you might expect, but in the genitive. I begrudge you neither mules, my child, nor anything else. And then we have the imperative at the beginning of the next line. Erkomai. I suppose it just means go. Now, we can't translate it as go, because it would sound just a bit too abrupt. I suppose it's something like, off you go then. I've said you can have them. Now you can go. Off you go. And then we have an interesting word, demoes here. The demoes are the household slaves. And Alcinous says the household slaves, here's the verb, F hoplidsto will organise, arrange a penen, a cart, for you, toy, again equals soy. The slaves will organise a wagon for you, a high wagon and a well-wheeled wagon. Now notice, oh yes, and then it's fitted with a hood. And you will remember that these are exactly the same words which Nausicaa used herself in her request in the previous section. Such repetition is a feature of Homeric style. It goes back to the fact that this poetry originally circulated in by word of mouth. It was oral poetry originally before it was written down. One of the advantages of such repetition, of course, is that it makes it easier for you. It's not new material that you have to learn, it's a repetition of previous lines. So three lines there, that is Alcinous's reply. And again, as we had hos ephato at the top of the page, now we have hos apon. Having spoken thus, apon, you know, is the aorist participle of lego. Having spoken thus, he gave instructions. It's obviously a Homeric version of kelluo, this verb. There must be some connection with kelluo. He ordered the slaves. This is the dative plural. You can see the sigma iota, the declension there. He ordered the slaves, or he gave instructions to the slaves, and they obeyed. One line, and notice how the obedience of the slaves follows immediately upon the issuing of the instructions. The instructions are given in the middle of the line, and obedience is given at the end of the line, and it suggests the efficiency of the royal palace and the authority and status of Alcinous. So, what do the slaves do? Interesting, here we have hoi men, masculine plural, the slaves, and then in the last line here we have cure de. The slaves on the one hand, the girl on the other. Now the girl is Nausicaa. So what do the slaves do? So the slaves, now remember the word for a cart in line 69 here is aperner. Now Homer uses two words. We have aperner here, and we have, well, it's usually hamaxa. It's a rough reading here, sorry, smoother reading here, it's amaxa. And that's the other word he uses for a cart. So the slaves, then, ara, is not the word that introduces a question. It's not a question. It's a little particle showing the logic of the procedure. Alcinous gives his orders, the slaves obey, and off they go to do what they've been told to do. So, it's almost so. Therefore, the slaves, where's the verb? The verb is here. Hopleo, enjammed. The slaves organised outside ektos, outside the palace, that is. The slaves then, outside the palace, organised a cart. And the cart is well-wheeled. I think we've had eutrokos before. And it's a mule cart. This is the adjective. You've got hermionon up here in line 3. Okay, that's the noun, a mule. This is an adjective, hermioneos, which is to do with mules or driven by mules. We'll just call it a mule cart. The slaves then, outside the palace, organised a well-wheeled mule cart. And this theta, in actual fact, is te, and the epsilon has been elided with the following vowel in hupagon, and so you're left with just a t from te, and that t then has combined with the rough breathing in hyopagon to become a th, and a th is a theta, and that's what you've got. Now we must translate this te. Te is the equivalent of que in Latin, and it goes one step on from where it goes in English. We must translate this te here, in front of Hermionus. They organised a well-wheeled mule cart, and they led the mules under hyopagon. Hyopo there as a prefix means under. And what are the mules being led under? Well, the answer is a yoke. Okay, they led the. There are two mules. One mule obviously isn't enough to. It's going to be quite a heavy cart with all the laundry and Nausicaa and possibly the maids as well. So, and they led the mules under. And here's the verb, zeuxan. Now it's an aorist, you can tell from the ending, but it's lost its augment. It should be zeuxan. And they yoked them beneath the cart, the wagon. So that's what the slaves do. What does Nausicaa do? Nausicaa, on the other hand, from her bedchamber, thalamos, notice the oia, genitive ending, carried, again it's the imperfect tense, without an augment, theren it should be. You'd probably, in actual fact, if this was prose, if this was Herodotus, you would use ek pharaoh. Out of the bedchamber, she carried the clothing, estheta, it's third declension noun, hence the alpha on the end, accusative singular. She carried the clothing, and the clothing is phaean, phaenan in actual fact, isn't it? It means shining in actual fact, but we're going to say expensive, the expensive clothing. This is the royal family. Their clothing is high quality stuff. So line 75, Nausicaa has brought the clothing out of her bedchamber, and katatithemi is the verb, aorist tense, and a proper aorist tense in actual fact, with an augment, etherken, and kata, of course, as a prefix, means down, and she put it down. Tan is the it, and it's feminine, and it clearly refers to the clothing. Esthers, esthertos is third feminine, and she put it down on epi, the well-polished wagon. Euzestos, again, is one of these compound adjectives that we meet in Homer, and I suppose the fact that it's a well-polished wagon, I suppose, if you wanted an equivalent, when the royal family they go out in a well-polished Rolls Royce or a well-polished Range Rover, and it's well-polished because they've got slaves to keep their equipment in good order. Well-polished means this is a wealthy royal family. Then we have Nausicaa's mother. First word, emphatic, and we'd met her a few in the previous sections, if you remember, and she's by the hearth, and she's overseeing the maids who are spinning wool, and this is the classic role of women in Homeric society. Here, though, her mother is going to prepare a picnic for Nausicaa, and her mother, in a hamper, kister, I suppose it's where the word chest comes from in the end, some sort of large box, and her mother, in a chest, put tithemi some edoden, some food, some provisions, some fine, excellent, high quality Waitrose provisions. Notice edoden is a feminine noun. And then we have another adjective describing this food, which is enjammed to the next line. It's not only very expensive food, it's pantoyen of every type. So this is not just, you know, a ham sandwich and a packet of crisps. No, this is a royal picnic, and there's going to be a whole host of different things, and that's what this adjective pantoyen means here, of every type. So she put in the hamper food of every type, and she put in some meat, opsa. It's a neuter plural in actual fact. Cooked meat, probably. Yes, it must be cooked meat. And meat, of course, well, not of course, but meat would have been a luxury in those days. And again, this is an indication of a seriously good royal picnic. She put in some cooked meat, and she poured, kato is the verb, and she poured in some wine, oinos, you know the word oinos, and she provides it. I think probably I would translate qn as provide rather than pour. And she provided some wine in a flask. This word askos is a flask, and the flask is made of goatskin. Aigeos is the word, and in a goatskin flask she provided some wine. Now, I suppose it's a bit odd that these teenage girls are provided with wine, but it's what Homer says, and it really simply pointing out the broad selection of different things which the girls are provided with. Notice that you've got 3 ins, n here in line 76, n again in 77, and n again there. In the chest she put this, in the chest she put that, and in the chest she put some as well. And now this repetition of the n there helps to form a list. And so we get this, and this, and this, and this. And again, the tricolon there suggests a number of different things going together to make the picnic. Kura, the girl, Nausicaa. And Nausicaa, here's the verb, it's epibino. It's gone middle for some reason, epibinomai, but bino is to go, epi is to go up onto. The girl, I think, would say climbed up onto the cart. Doken, well, edoka is the aorist of didomi. The augment is omitted. It's first word, isn't it? She gave. Interestingly, the subject isn't made clear. I mean, we can deduce fairly easily that the subject is her mother, Arater, but it's not made clear. But interestingly, it's the first word. She gave. Her mother also gave her. And I suppose the verb there, of giving, first word, is emphasising the generosity of her mother here. And she gave, now what does she give her, besides all the things she's got already? She gave her some liquid olive oil. And this liquid olive oil is provided in, again, in a golden flask, what would you, bottle, I suppose, although it would probably be made of earthenware rather than glass. I know, what am I talking about? It's golden, it's made of gold. And the gold in actual fact is quite significant, isn't it? This is, again, an indication of royal wealth. In a golden flask, she gave her some liquid olive oil. Now, what's the olive oil for? These days, of course, we use olive oil for cooking, but the girls aren't going to be cooking. There's no barbecue at the beach here. It's a cold picnic. The olive oil is going to be used as a soap and as a moisturiser. And this is really, I suppose, the first indication. I suppose it's going to be used also to help clean the clothes, I would imagine. But as Homer makes clear in the next line, line 80, this is a strange conjunction. And it's going to express purpose. And this verb here, in order to anoint herself, I'd probably say in order to moisturize herself. It's a purpose clause, though it doesn't look like one, together with her maid women, her serving women. So the olive oil here is, it's an indication that, okay, the girls are going to the river and their purpose, their primary purpose, is to wash the clothes. But of course they'll probably have a swim in the river themselves, and they will need some olive oil to moisturize their skin. So it's also going to be a bit of a recreational trip, as well as a there's a job to do, wash the clothes, but they can also have some fun at the same time. Line 81, Herder, feminine, obviously. So Nausicaa. Nausicaa took the whip. Now this is interesting. And the reins, neuter plural, hernia, and the reins, the shining reins. I suppose it's they're going to be made of leather. I suppose we'd say yes. I suppose they could shine, even though they're made of leather in the sunshine. And the shining reins. And here's the verb. And she whipped the mules. Mules is understood. And she whipped the mules. It's an infinitive in actual fact, to set them in motion, to begin the drive. And it's quite interesting here, the impression we get of Nausicaa. She's not the sort of girl who, as I imagine some princesses do, sit around and let other people do the work for her. She was the one, if you remember, who collected the clothes from her own bedroom. She didn't leave a maid to do it. She doesn't need anybody to drive the wagon. She's going to drive it herself. There's a certain get up and go about Nausicaa. She's not a shrinking violet, as we will see later on when she encounters Odysseus. So she took the whip and the shining reins, and she whipped the mules to begin the drive. And then we have an interesting noun, kanakair. Now notice the guttural here, kappa, and the kai. Now these two gutturals are to create some sort of onomatopoeia. They suggest the clattering of the hooves as the mules move off. Kanakair, and it's carefully chosen by Homer. That word is deliberately used and in some ways it's quite emphatic because it's first word. Now you may look at that line and say it's not first word. It's halfway through the line. But if you remember, the hexameter is divided into two halves by a caesura, and the caesura is here. The colon indicates it. So there's a pause in the middle of the line. And therefore, kanakair is the first word in the second half of the line. And it's emphasised, thereby. So there was a clattering from the two mules. Strange ending, don't worry too much about it. Interestingly enough, I forgot to mention that there is another onomatopoeic effect in this passage, and it's up here in line 79. When you have liquids, and the liquid here is olive oil, you often get L's accumulating. And we have two here. We have le kuthoi and a lion. Now, L's are often used by poets when they are, it's called, in actual fact, the technical term for L is a liquid. We call a kappa a guttural, and we call a P a labial, or we call L's a liquids, and they're often used when liquids are described. So that's the other onomatopoeic effect in this passage. Going back then to the last two lines here, Haida is feminine. It's referring to the mules, actually. The mules, here's the verb. I suppose we'd say something like trotted off. Amoton is a strange word. Doesn't look like it, but it's an adverb, and adverbs often have an accusative form in actual fact. And the mules trotted off eagerly, I think. We'll say something like that. And they carried, should be FR on, and they carried the clothes and herself, Nausicaa that is, and Nausicaa herself. No mention of the maids, or there is in the next line though, but not alone. Now notice how that phrase is very emphatic there at the beginning of the next line. They carried the clothes and Nausicaa, but not alone. Now why does Homer emphasise the fact that Nausicaa is accompanied? Well, you have to remember that she is a princess. She's an unmarried princess, and therefore she can't leave the palace unaccompanied. It would just be, it's just in the same way, even sort of not so long ago in England, sort of high status women would need a chaperone when they went out in public. Now this is 2,500 years ago, and Nausicaa is a high status young woman. She's also unmarried. She needs some sort of escort. In this case it's only her maids, but she's not by herself. She can't be by herself. The other point is that the maids do serve another function, in that when they encounter Odysseus, the maids will react rather fearfully, but Nausicaa doesn't. And we need the maids in some ways to act as a foil, to show how strong and noble and brave Nausicaa is in comparison with the maids who run off fearfully. So, not alone, together with her went, this is the verb, the other maids also.